Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and we're joined once again by Mark Gonzales over at First National Bullion. We have some interesting stuff to go into today because there are a lot of telltale signs happening. They're pretty much telling us what is coming in the future for the economy. So out of Zero Hedge here, it says hawkish Fed pauses rate cuts as expected, reignites inflation fear. So we're seeing a pause to the rate cuts that we've been seeing recently. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's because we don't have to worry. Everything's good. Trump's in. There's so much more to this than meets the eye, my friends. And I wanted to kind of go into that with you guys as well, with Mark, who we are going to go into some of these examples here of why we're seeing all these problems with the economy, these telltale signs that the economy is dying. And when you have over $30 trillion in debt, you're not going to suddenly just snap your fingers and change this. And when you don't look at the root cause of inflation, you're not going to fix this. And when you have a banking crisis on top of this, where people's money, by the way, is not actually insured by the FDIC to the extent that they think, we are in for some very tumultuous few years ahead, and we need to understand this so that we as individuals can make the right decisions to protect ourselves and protect our money. So before we go into this, I urge people to check that link below for firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. It has to be that exact link. Don't worry, it is in the description. And there you could buy physical gold, silver, platinum, or palladium. You could hold the gold in your hands, put it in a vault, or put it in an IRA outside of those traditional IRAs, and save yourself from the CBDC, save yourself from the crash of the economy, which, by the way, cannot be stopped no matter how many different haircuts you give it. It's all going to end up in the same place, and you all need to have solutions. Here, through this link, you could schedule an appointment for a free consultation with Mark Gonzales and a complimentary investors package. Make sure to use that official link in the description. And when you sign up, let him know in the comments section of the forum that you found him at World Alternative Media, or WAM, WAM. Anyways, so let's get into this. We see this pause on rate cuts, Mark. This is seems to be signifying something much bigger coming down the line here. We all knew that, you couldn't just snap your fingers. Trump isn't going to get in and suddenly all the problems with the economy are going to solve themselves, and then the banking crisis is going to solve itself. That's just not how it works. We're dealing with global economic chaos. Let's go into this a little bit, Mark, and we're going to go into some of the examples. But why do you think that we're seeing this pause for at the Federal Reserve when it comes to interest rates?
Well, the Fed is realizing what everybody should be already noticing with their pocketbook when they go to the store, that inflation's not under control. That's the only reason that they would have to be paused. Trump wants a weaker dollar. The only way that we can get this economy going back again, which really is not, it's to our own demise, because it's either through stimulus, easing, or lowering of rates, which is going to jack up the money supply and cause more inflation in return. But there's not a lot of ways out of this, and I'm not sure if they're going to raise. I doubt they're going to raise. Eventually, I think that they do lower. At some point, they're going to have to force rates back down to zero to get things going. But everybody should be feeling that their grocery bill is going up and up and up and up and up. I mean, I realize that even here in Mexico, that many items I buy every 2 weeks, I'm paying a little bit more for them than I was 2 weeks ago. And I'm sure everybody's noticing that. The Fed just simply caught word of it. So they backpedaled on everything that they said.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And we have these details coming in. We're not going to go into all 25 of these. That would be crazy. But economic black hole, it says over at Zero Hedge, here are 25 signs that the economy is dying after 4 years of Bidenomics. And it kind of goes into the fact that like the housing market is dealing with a lot of issues here. And remember, you will own nothing and you will be happy. That the claim by Klaus Schwab over at the World Economic Forum says in 2024, sales of previously owned homes in the United States fell to lowest level since 1995. And on top of that, pending home sales dropped another 4.5% last month. That was the fastest rate of decline that we have seen in more than 2 years. So since we were dealing with the crisis surrounding the pandemic hoax, of course, we're dealing with massive credit card debt across the board. And something that I find really interesting is the credit rejection rates. They're not giving people credits right now, which signifies a lot. On top of that, we have the restaurant chains collapsing. Mark, let's start with the housing market. What do you think it signifies when we're seeing these issues with, people first can't afford homes, can't afford private property, which is a major part of the basis of independence. And of course, on top of that, we see this bubble that, I mean, it's been propped up for so long. What's going to happen to it when we have all these pending home sales dropping and people not able to buy homes?
Well, you're going to have a market crash like you saw in 2008. The reason these homes aren't selling is one, they're just too damn expensive, and rates being where they are, it's just too much for the average person to be able to buy it. Now you need 2-3 jobs from 2 working adults in the household just to be able to afford it. And when that softens and you don't have a bid to continuously get that bubble, you don't always have someone higher bidding. It goes in the opposite direction, and it can go that way in a vast hurry. So I personally, I've been saying for a while, housing's going to come down significantly, and that's a really sad thing, because that's where majority of people have their wealth. That and the 401ks are going to come down as well. And once that starts to happen, then it's kind of like a fire sale. It's every man, woman, and child for themselves. You just okay. Our house dropped 50,000 in the last month. Oh my God, it's already down 25,000 this month. We need to start selling now. And then all it takes is one guy on the block, one gal on the block to list their property or take a subnormal offer, and that sets the tone for everything else. And it's just a domino fall.
Well, and then BlackRock comes in, of course, just like the LA fires. Immediately, BlackRock comes in. Smart cities everywhere. No one has property.
Well, you're not intended to own anything, and you're not going to have the liquidity to go buy up the opportunity. So what people need to do is they need to start buying metal now. I mean, if you look at gold at where it's at and where silver where it's at versus our money supply and our debt, which it counterbalances throughout all history, you can still buy a gallon of gas with a quarter from 1964 or earlier. But gold and silver compared to $30+ trillion in debt, unfunded liabilities, 20+ trillion M2, M3 is not reported. It's going to be a shit show. Yeah. I mean, it really is. So you're going to have this massive liquidity event, and I think that's kind of being carried over into the one comment that you said where outside of, just forget about delinquencies for a second. I mean, credit just is not being issued on the scale and pace that it was before. So if you look at every single market crash that happened before, and just think back to yourself, if you're old enough and you had a house or credit cards back in, let's say, 2005, before 2007, 2008, rates started to rise. Credit card, delinquency started to rise, but also the opportunity to get a credit card and to roll over your house into a new loan. I mean, it just simply wasn't there. So the banks know what's coming, and they're not stupid. They're not going to take dumb risks. These people know how to assess risk, and they do it far better than you or I. Yeah. If they're not lending and they're having more denials on credit applications, that's a sign of something to come. That means something is a massive afoot. That's exactly how it happened in the Great Depression. That's exactly how it happened in 2000, even though that was a dot-com bubble, but it was also a credit event. Yeah. All these things are credit events. And unfortunately, we got this guy in the office that everybody's saying is going to be the savior of it, but I just don't buy anything he says. Father of vaccines, and then we come out with $500 million into AI, with a chunk of that going to mRNA and cancer preventative or wellness vaccinations. Bullshit. Yeah. There's been cures for cancer for a very, very long time, but it's not profitable.
Well, and let's kind of look at this. You mentioned something earlier. It took me a while. My computer kind of glitched out, but just the dollar to silver ratio, and then compared to or the ratio in 2013 or 1913 rather, to now, and as well as the dollar to gold ratio. And again, 1913 versus now. Why is this so significant when we're dealing with like a credit crisis, a debt crisis, when we're dealing with a banking crisis, when we're dealing with our currency basically plummeting in value worldwide? People don't look at it as the world reserve currency in many countries already. What significance does the dollar to gold ratio say about this?
It is it has everything to say. I mean, you see it right there, dollar to gold ratio, depending on what matrix you're looking at on a 5-year or 1 year, then you've got 12,006, my eyes aren't so good, but 12,626, 1561, just slightly lower. on the other matrix. So that's where gold and silver essentially should be, offsetting our money supply and our debt, because the debt and the money are the same thing. So what people need to do, or at least try to do, and I know it's very difficult out there. Maybe you're working 2 jobs. Maybe you have a job you don't like. Maybe you got a kid that cries all the time and dogs that need food and a husband that doesn't care, or whatever. People have issues, but people are so caught up in the day-to-day that they can't see the forest past the trees. And in order to survive, let alone thrive in what's coming, you have to be able to decipher and recognize definitively what is to come. And I think that's exactly what that says. Yeah. And then that also goes back to the logic and deductive reasoning of every other market crash of reduced credit. Right. So something's afoot and something's coming, and we got a guy at the helm that really is going back on everything people thought he stood for. And that's not a good sign.
Yeah, we have obviously people who were calling out the North American Union years ago suddenly supporting it because, oh, it's Trump. Just today, they're talking about sending all these migrants to Guantanamo Bay. And I seem to remember, and my memory I have a memory more than a few years long. Obama and Trump both had run on getting rid of Gitmo, and here we are. They're talking about using it as this major place to send migrants. And by the way, the migrants wouldn't be there if you didn't mess with their country, and then offer them welfare. The CIA has been importing them, so it's a big. I did a video recently on this that people could check out, but it's a big hoax. It's a psyop. But when it comes to the destruction of property, the debt, the destruction of the currency, the banking crisis, all of it leads to one place: people dependent on the state for help. Eventually, the main bank isn't going to be any of these major banks. It's going to be the government itself, a major monopoly, and it'll be digitalized. It'll be all based in AI infrastructure and, of course, carbon credits, social credits, these kinds of things. People say, oh, well, Trump wouldn't do that. He won't have a choice because it's going to be a global situation that, of course, you're not going to just expunge $30 trillion of debt. Oh, yeah, big debt jubilee. Good luck seeing how that works out, because at the end of the day, first of all, this needs to crash. And you can't save it. You need to have a phoenix from the ashes, rising from the ashes kind of scenario here, because you're not going to save a system that is intrinsically bad. And of course, all fiat currencies eventually revert to their true value of zero. Always have, always will, since 1024 AD, as far as we've looked back in history. And of course, you add in usury to that, and add in all the debt that people end up owing, quote unquote, under the social contract. You bring in this digital system, people will say, oh, it's better than this old system. It's less corrupt, because you will feel like you have more money, you have more opportunities. Really, in reality, it's a destruction of independence, and is forcing you onto one big digital system that controls everything based on your behavior, what you do, what you say, and where you travel, and how much food you eat, and all these different things. And what food you eat is also determined based on the rations, based on them. This sounds crazy. This is what the World Economic Forum says they want. And as far as I'm concerned, with the AI and the technocracy and what we're seeing with Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Larry Ellison, Sam Altman, all these people clinging to Trump right now, the CEO of Google, who suddenly is pro-Trump guy who's based, or whatever people will say in memes online. All these people are leading to the exact same goal as the World Economic Forum. No matter what Trump says, we're seeing the results. Biometrics for everyone, internet ID, which is coming out, which is Obama's idea. I mean, people have to understand, it's not about being negative here. It's about knowing the negatives so that we can be positive with it, so we can apply the right solutions and not wait for them to give us their solutions, which has always been the goal. If they wanted him dead, he'd be dead. That's the thing. You cannot get away as president with a lot of these things. If you're going to take down the Federal Reserve and do all this stuff, get rid of the income tax. That sounds great. What about the rest of them? What about the IRS? What about all this other stuff? Look, the end of the day, one safety net that I know throughout history has worked: gold and silver. Gold and silver. We could go back thousands of years. We could go back to the Byzantine Empire, for example. The people in the Byzantine Empire were saved during the economic collapse that they witnessed at that time by gold and silver. And of course, people will say, well, you can't eat gold and silver. Well, you can eat Soylent Green when you have nothing to pay for other things. When you don't have any of your money backed up, all the money you worked so hard for your whole life, put in the bank, entrusted the bank with, when it goes down and you can't access it, you can't eat that either. What you can eat is food that you buy with things that you've preserved your wealth with, like gold and silver. So, Mark, why is it so important that people go and check out First National Bullion? Again, I urge people to look at the exact link. It has to be this link, firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/. Why is it so important that people go there now and don't sit on their hands and wait?
Well, outside of the obvious of gold and silver being the counterbalance of the monetary system, and then when the monetary system collapses throughout history, it rises to mark that debt. But also for the simple fact that, you know, you get caught up again to the day to day, and next thing you know, Bitcoin goes from 50,000 to 100,000. Now I'm not promoting Bitcoin, even though I have some. Last run we had in metals, which would have gone a lot higher if it wasn't for the margin rates to collapse the market to create a narrative on a chart pattern. Silver jumped up from $20 to $50, and that run only lasted about 6 months. So once things start moving, I mean, there is no going back. You can't close Pandora's box once it's open. So I would say, give me a call, fill out the information. Let's have a conversation. I'm pretty knowledgeable in what I do. And we get to know each other. Not to mention, if you're watching these shows, I think we're going to get along quite well. These conversations I have with clients aren't just about the money. I tend to get to know them, but do something now while you have the illusion of time on your side. But more importantly, again, going back to the US debt clock, or just looking at the monetary base that we have of M2 and our national debt comparative to the gold and silver price, this stuff is cheap. It is cheap. So, buy silver at 30, $35 or buy at 50. The longer you wait, the more risk you're going to take. I would think someone needs to lock this up and get it over with, and then know that is off the table, and they can start focusing on something else, like maybe storing food, maybe building, a well, whatever the case may be, because it's not just going to be a monetary aspect that you're going to have to survive and get through.
Absolutely. As I've always said, it's about food, water, shelter, self-defense. You're not gathering things for the toughest guy on the block. And gold and silver as wealth insurance, not meant as an investment. It's insurance essentially on your wealth that you've put so much work into achieving, so that you can sustain yourself, your family, your kids can sustain themselves, your grandkids, hopefully down the line, versus economic collapse, as large as which we might be seeing in the near future. When you have something like gold and silver, in my opinion, you're going to have the keys to having financial independence while everyone else is on their knees begging for scraps. And it sounds crazy, but we've been through this throughout history thousands of times if you go worldwide, and it's nothing new. And that's why if once a dollar of all things goes down, the dollar is supposed to be like the world reserve currency, the strongest currency in the world. It can never be gone. It can never go down. Of course it will. And when that goes down, it's going to be a lot harder than seeing, the Venezuelan bolivar fuerte go down, or, the Argentinian peso go down. In this case, we're seeing something on a much higher magnitude that's going to affect all these emerging economies worldwide. It's going to affect the pound. It's going to affect the euro. It's going to affect the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, all these guys. Again, there's a reason why so many countries are shifting away from the dollar towards BRICS Plus right now. And by the way, as much as they'll say, oh, it's based on gold and stuff like that. Yeah. Can you hold it in your hands? I doubt it. I doubt we're ever going to see a point where we can hold it in our hands. It's all going digital. One of the main countries in the world pushing CBDCs has always been China. So again, on the other side of things, you still end up with the CBDC, whether through the Treasury, because the Fed says they're not going to do it, which again, goes back to what I've been saying before. I believe that the government is going to have a monopoly on all these things, not private corporations. It's going to be the corporation, the one big monopoly. And I believe the Treasury will likely put out a CBDC and not the Federal Reserve itself. That's my opinion. But nonetheless, in the run up to that, we have a banking crisis, the FDIC completely bankrupt, the shortfall on that insane, the pension shortfall insane, unemployment. Oh, well, don't worry, we'll give you guaranteed basic income. Just sit on your butt at home and be placated on drugs, playing video games, as Yuval Noah Harari says his dream is to see. We have opportunities here to protect ourselves from what comes next. And I urge people to check that link below. That's firstnationalbullion.com/schedule-consult/ has to be that exact link. It's in the description of the video. If you're watching on X, it's in the comments of the video. And of course, as always, You can get that free consultation with Mark, and you can also sign up there and let him know in the comment section of the forum that you found him at World Alternative Media, or WAM, WAM. There's an opportunity before us. So I urge everyone to please take it. We are in a turning point in history. And while everyone else is excited, oh, everything's good now, I'm going to sit on my hands, that is when the most important time for you, that is when you jump up to your feet and do something about it. Because while everyone else is sitting and looking the other way and pretending everything's great, that's your opportunity to prepare yourself. So I appreciate everyone watching. As always, good to talk with you, Mark. Great insights as always. And there's so much more to go into, which we'll be doing in upcoming videos. And of course, you could hear from Mark on a lot of these issues personally by going to that link below. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and Mark Gonzales signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.